The year is 1953. The Cold War has sliced the world in two, and in the shadow of this global paranoia, every secret holds immense power. Deep in the barren heart of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, a Soviet geological team is searching for oil. They are soldiers of science, sent to map the hidden wealth beneath the sand. But what they are about to find was never meant to be discovered. The desert is an ocean of silence, where even the wind seems to hold its breath. Day after relentless day, the team drills, surveys, and logs their findings. It's routine, exhausting work, until one morning, a technician stares at his seismic scanner, his blood running cold. A perfect triangular echo buried deep beneath the dunes. It's impossible. Nature doesn't draw straight lines, and it certainly doesn't build perfect triangles. At first, they blame the equipment. Maybe it's interference from some deep mineral deposit. But as they investigate the area, their compasses spin wildly, useless. The static on their radios transforms into a low, rhythmic pulse. A hum. It feels alive. Something deep under the sand is humming. There's only one thing to do. They begin to dig. For 2 days, they battle the unforgiving desert sun, and then their shovels hit something. They uncover the apex of what looks like a pyramid. But it's not made of sandstone or limestone or any material they've ever seen. It's black, like obsidian, yet it feels soft to the touch, and even under the scorching heat, it's unnaturally cold. The edges are impossibly sharp, as if carved by a technology that defies erosion and time itself. No inscriptions, no cracks, just smooth, silent perfection rising from the earth. Colonel Vasilev, the expedition leader, can only whisper, "Impossible." There are no pyramids in Turkmenistan, but there it is, a structure that shouldn't exist, standing right in front of them. They expand the excavation, peeling back layers of sand like pages from a forbidden book. With every meter they uncover, the strange phenomena intensify. Their watches start losing seconds, then gaining them back at random. Shadows stretch in the wrong direction, defying the sun. And at night, carried on the desert wind, they hear whispers. Not human voices, but the faint echo of words they can't quite understand. By the third night, several men refuse to sleep near the site. They swear the ground vibrates, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic beat, like a giant heart buried beneath them. One of the workers wakes up in a cold sweat, weeping. He describes a dream so vivid, it felt real. He saw a glowing door in the desert, calling his name. The next morning, he's gone. All that's left are his footprints, leading directly to the half-buried pyramid. And then they simply stop. He vanished into the sand. Panic begins to fester in the camp. But for the Soviet command, fear is a weakness. Curiosity is power. A coded message arrives from Moscow. Continue excavation. Document everything. Do not fail. And so, they dig. By the 6th day, they have exposed an entire face of the structure. It's vast, at least 100 meters tall, a monument of such impossible precision, in a place so remote, should have rewritten human history. But no one outside this small, isolated camp will ever know it exists. As the sun sets, a geologist named Antonov notices something terrifying. The pyramid reflects no light. It absorbs every ray, a perfect void against the horizon. Yet, just beneath its surface, faint symbols shimmer and pulse, like veins of trapped light. They flicker in a slow, steady rhythm, matching the vibrations in the ground. That same night, the radio picks up a clear signal. Not static, a pattern. 3 distinct tones, repeating every 19 seconds. When they slow down the recording, it sounds eerily like breathing. The men are on edge. Some demand they abandon the site, claiming it's cursed. But Colonel Vassiliev stands firm. "We are soldiers of science," he declares, his voice strained. "There is no curse, only discovery." At dawn, he makes the decision that will seal all of their fates. They are going to open it. They think they've found an ancient tomb, a relic from a civilization lost to time, but the markings, the energy, the impossible silence, it all points to something else. This isn't a monument to the dead. It's a prison, or a warning. As the sun rises on the seventh day, something beneath the sand stirs. The humming deepens, the ground trembles, and for the first time, the crew understands their fatal mistake. They weren't the ones uncovering it. All this time, it was uncovering them. The deeper they dug, the stranger the desert became. The Karakum had always been a place of profound silence, an endless, shifting sea of dunes broken only by the sigh of the wind. But now, it was different. It was as if the desert itself was holding its breath, listening. At night, things took a turn for the bizarre. The men, hardened soldiers and scientists, swore they could hear faint whispers carried on the dry air. These weren't voices they could understand. They spoke in no known language, a murmuring chorus that seemed to ride the wind. At first, they dismissed it. Just exhaustion, maybe dehydration, playing tricks on the mind. Classic desert mirages. But every night, the whispers grew louder and felt closer. It wasn't just their minds playing tricks. The camp dogs, usually fearless, refused to go anywhere near the excavation pit. They'd whine and tuck their tails, staring into the darkness with their hackles raised. Then the instruments started going haywire. Compasses spun uselessly, delicate metal tools warped under the seemingly normal sun. And strangest of all, tiny electrical discharges began to flicker between the grains of sand, as if the static electricity of the desert had come alive. Colonel Vassiliev, a man of iron will and little patience, ordered his men to ignore the superstition. But what other word was there for what was happening? One night, a worker named Pavel woke the entire camp with a blood-curdling scream. He was frantic, pointing out into the darkness. He claimed he'd seen figures, silhouettes made entirely of sand, standing in a perfect circle around the Black Pyramid. Their faces, he sobbed, were shifting like dust devils in the wind, and they were chanting his name. The next morning, Pavel's cot was empty. All that remained were his footprints, leading directly out into the unforgiving desert. And a single glove, still inexplicably warm. On the seventh night, the desert unleashed its fury, but not in any way they had ever witnessed. A sandstorm, a colossal wall of dust and crackling static, rolled across the camp without a breath of wind to announce it. It just appeared, roaring out of the calm night. Trapped inside the storm, the terrified team swore they heard music, deep, droning tones, like a choir buried miles beneath the dunes. When the storm vanished as quickly as it came, they found that every clock in the camp, from wristwatches to sensitive lab equipment, read a different time. Something out here wasn't just affecting their minds or their instruments. It was distorting time itself. The next morning brought a new discovery. A symbol had been carved into the sand, right beside the excavation site. It wasn't drawn, it was burned into the earth like a brand. 3 interlocking triangles. As the sun rose higher, they noticed the same pattern appearing faintly on the surface of the Black Pyramid itself, glowing with a soft, internal light for a moment before fading back into darkness. A linguist on the team felt a jolt of recognition. The pattern was uncannily similar to symbols found on ancient Sumerian tablets. But this was far older, more intricate, almost mathematical in its precision. He managed a loose translation, a single, chilling word, awaken. That night, a shaken Colonel Vasilev finally broke protocol and radioed Moscow. He reported everything: the electromagnetic anomalies, the impossible sandstorm, the disappearances, the symbol. The reply he received was brief, clipped, and utterly terrifying. Continue operations. Do not engage with local phenomena. Maintain radio silence. The colonel lowered the receiver slowly, the cold desert air feeling like ice on his skin. A horrifying realization dawned on him. Moscow wasn't surprised. They weren't concerned. They already knew. They hadn't sent him here to simply dig up an artifact. They were waiting for it to open. 10 days into the dig, we'd uncovered a corner of the structure. It was a perfect, razor-sharp intersection. There were no chisel marks, no seams, nothing to suggest it was built block by block. It looked like it had been poured into existence. We took samples back to the lab, and what we found under the microscope was impossible. The material had no crystalline structure, no atomic arrangement we could recognize. It wasn't metal, it wasn't stone, and it definitely wasn't glass. It was something else entirely. A perfect black surface that seemed to drink light and absorb heat without a trace. It was a void given form. Our first attempts to analyze it were a complete failure. Drill bits shattered against it. We tried to heat it with a blowtorch, but instead of getting hot, the air around it dropped by 10 degrees. It felt like the material wasn't just reacting to us. It was responding, almost intelligently. Antonov, our chief geologist, put it perfectly. He said, "It feels aware, like it's waiting for us to make the wrong move." His words sent a shiver through the entire team, because, deep down, we all felt it too. The deeper we dug, the stranger things became. Our equipment started going haywire. Sound recorders picked up a constant, low vibration at 18 Hz a frequency just below human hearing, known to induce feelings of deep dread and panic. And it worked. The crew grew anxious, irritable. Then came the hallucinations. Men on the night shift swore they saw shapes moving inside the pyramid, like shadows swimming through solid stone. One evening, a technician was monitoring the surface when he saw faint symbols begin to crawl across it. They weren't etched on top. They were shifting asterisk underneath asterisk the material, glowing like molten veins. They pulsed slowly, in a steady rhythm that matched the hum of the desert itself. We brought in a linguist, but after one look, he refused to go near it again. He was terrified, claiming the symbols rearranged themselves the moment he tried to decipher them. The colonel, growing desperate for answers, brought in a portable Geiger counter. The needle immediately went off the scale. But it wasn't radiation. It was a signal, a clear, repeating pattern that rose and fell every 43 seconds, like a heartbeat. The real shock came when we tried to use a magnetic probe to explore a small fracture near the base. The moment the probe touched the opening, it was yanked out of sight. The line snapped taut, then went slack. When we reeled it in, the probe was gone. Not melted, not broken, just erased from existence. There was no residue, no burn marks. It had simply vanished. That's when it finally dawned on us. We hadn't discovered an ancient building. We had found a machine. An impossibly old, impossibly advanced machine. Later that night, as we all sat around the campfire, too unnerved to sleep, one of the junior excavators whispered a thought that infected the entire camp. "Maybe it's not buried," he said. "Maybe it's resting." No one slept after that. We just watched it, waiting. And just before dawn, we got what we were waiting for. A low tremor shook the ground. The pyramid's black surface shimmered, like a heat haze in the cold desert air. and for less than a second, a line of light appeared across one of its faces. A seam, a door. At dawn, a low hum rolled through the sand, waking the entire crew. The air around the pyramid began to shimmer, as if the heat itself had come alive. A soldier yelled that his compass was spinning wildly. Another shouted his watch had frozen. Every single timepiece in the camp was stuck at exactly 3:17 a.m. Colonel Vassilev's voice cut through the confusion, ordering all men to the excavation pit. As they gathered, the sun began to rise, painting the desert in shades of blood red. And there, on the face of the pyramid, they saw it, a thin seam, glowing with a faint blue light. It hadn't been there the night before. Antonov, the geologist, whispered what they were all thinking. "It's a door." Vassilev barked orders for the generator and floodlights. He wanted to see what they were dealing with. As the powerful beams struck the pyramid surface, something impossible happened. The light didn't reflect. It bent, curving round the structure as if being swallowed by it. And then, without a sound, the glowing seam split open. The door moved like liquid metal, peeling apart without a hint of friction. It revealed nothing but absolute blackness, a void so complete it seemed to drink the light from their lamps. There was no dust, no rush of ancient air, just ... nothing. But the hum grew louder, and inside that perfect darkness, faint geometric shapes began to shimmer, arranging and rearranging themselves like constellations seen through deep water. It wasn't empty. It was alive. One of the younger soldiers, a man named Alexei, was either overcome with awe or driven by a sudden madness. He stepped forward, his flashlight trembling in his hand. He reached the threshold and tentatively touched the edge of the blackness. He gasped. For a split second, the beam from his flashlight bent backwards, curving toward the opening as if pulled by an unseen force. Then his entire body convulsed. He dropped the light, and it vanished into the void without making a sound. Alexei stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror, his lips trembling. He tried to speak, but only a burst of static came from his throat. His voice was gone. Two men dragged him away from the structure as he started shaking violently, his eyes unfocused, as if he was seeing two realities at once. He just kept pointing back at the open door. On his forearm, blisters began to rise, forming perfect triangular patterns that were burned into his flesh. The medic screamed. When they tried to wash the burns, the shapes didn't fade. They pulsed with a faint, inner light, almost as if they were moving under his skin. Antonov, his face pale, screamed at the colonel, "Shut it! Close the damn thing!" But the door didn't move. It just stood there open, silent and waiting. Vassilev grabbed the radio, his hands trembling as he tried to contact Moscow. "This is Vassilev. The structure has activated. We are requesting the line filled with static." Then a reply came through, faint but chillingly cold. "Maintain position. Do not retreat. Observe only." The colonel froze. The radio clutched in his hand. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Moscow wasn't surprised. They knew this could happen. As that realization sank in, the sky above them began to flicker, like lightning trapped inside the clouds. The desert air, once scorching, turned unnaturally cold. And from the black doorway, a single, low tone emerged, sound so deep it vibrated in their bones and made their vision blur at the edges. Then, in that impossible darkness, something moved. It wasn't walking or crawling. It was shifting, like a shadow, learning how to breathe. The wind died. The desert fell utterly silent, as the hum from the doorway reached a perfect, unnatural pitch. Colonel Vassilev whispered the last words captured on the recording before it cut out. "It is not a door. It's an invitation. When the sun rose over the Karakum Desert, the world had been wiped clean. The pyramid was gone. The humming door was gone. All that remained was the wind, whispering through a field of empty, shredded tents. Colonel Vasilev pushed himself up from the sand, his head ringing. The air tasted of ozone, like the aftermath of a lightning strike. But the sky was a perfect, cloudless blue. He saw the camp's generator, now a melted slag of metal fused to the ground. The radio tower was twisted into a corkscrew. He shouted for his men, for Antonov, for anyone. The silence that answered was so absolute it felt like a physical weight. Where the great pit had been dug, there was now a circle of flawless black glass, smooth as a mirror. It reflected the empty sky, a beautiful and terrifying wound on the face of the earth. Vasilev staggered towards it. There was no heat, no ash, just that humming, bone-deep silence. Then he saw it, Antonov's notebook, half buried in the sand. The last page was a frantic scrawl of ink and blood. It read, "The door is open." But it wasn't us who crossed through. Vasilev scanned the horizon, desperate for a footprint. A tire track, any sign that his team had ever existed. Nothing. The desert was a blank slate. He snatched up the radio, his hands trembling, and hailed Moscow. Static, for hours. He repeated the same call. "Base command, this is Vasilev. Do you read?" 3 low, steady notes, repeating every 19 seconds. The same pulse they had recorded days before. But this time, it wasn't coming from the sky. It was coming from beneath his feet, from under the glass. 2 days later, the rescue team arrived. They found an abandoned camp, a perfect circle of black glass, a pair of boots, and a camera tripod aimed at the void. The film reel was still inside, but every single frame was bleached white, overexposed by a light that defied physics. Stranger still, the film's counter didn't start at 1. It ended before it began. The official report, which the public would never see, called it a temporal malfunction. The Soviet government buried the incident under the code name Threshold. The Karakum expedition was erased from history, its members declared missing in action. Inside the Ministry of Science, classified files described an object that could distort time, perception, and matter itself. One scientist scribbled in the margins, "Subject may not be physical." Another added in red ink, "Do not dig again." Years went by. Then, in 1971, a man appeared at a hospital in Kazakhstan. He was gaunt, his skin burned, his eyes wide with a fear that time hadn't erased. He claimed to be Colonel Vasilev, missing for nearly 2 decades. Doctors thought he was delusional, until he spoke of a humming door and men who vanished into light. When they asked how he'd survived, he whispered, "We didn't find it. It found us." He began to draw, over and over, 3 interlocking triangles, until his hands bled. Days later, he suffered a violent seizure. His brainwave patterns pulsed in a familiar rhythm, the same 3 notes recorded. In the desert, in 1953, the moment the signal on the EEG flatlined, so did his heart. Among his few belongings, authorities found a small, black shard wrapped in cloth. It was impossibly heavy, colder than ice, and reflected no light. Under every test, it registered as nothing. Not metal, not stone. When a light was shined on it, it emitted a faint hum, then went silent. 48 hours later, the shard vanished from the secure lab. Months after, one of the scientists on the case received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message in red ink. Object reactivated. Awaiting next appearance. Below were the coordinates for the Karakum site. Officially, the threshold event never happened. But one classified file still holds a final, chilling sentence: containment failed. Subject now dormant, and somewhere, deep beneath the shifting sands of the Karakum Desert, the hum continues, faint, steady, and patient, waiting for someone to listen again. When the Soviet Union fell in 1991, its walls of silence came crashing down. In the chaos, archives were abandoned, and secrets buried for decades began to surface. A single, thin file appeared on the black market. Stamped on its cover in red ink were 2 words: Project Threshold. Inside were 27 pages, most of them damaged or censored. But between the blacked-out lines, fragments told a story. There were grainy photos of strange shapes half buried in sand, triangular shadows under an empty sky. There was a list of names, all crossed out except one, Vasilev K., and attached to the last page, a handwritten note in faded Cyrillic: time behaves differently near the structure. The document vanished as quickly as it appeared, but not before a copy was uploaded to a small online forum. It was dismissed as a hoax, a pyramid that distorts time in the middle of the Turkmen desert. It sounded like fiction. But 6 months later, a satellite passing over the Karakum Desert recorded an anomaly. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a massive black triangle, nearly 100 meters across, appeared on the infrared feed. It wasn't there a second before, and it was gone a second later. The data spike lasted exactly 43 seconds, matching the pulse interval described in the old Soviet logs. There was no crater, no heat signature, just a geometric void so dark it seemed to absorb the sensors themselves. When independent analysts tried to find the original footage, the file was missing. Not deleted, removed. Every trace of it was rewritten, as if the image had never existed. But one technician, working a night shift in Minsk, managed to print a single still before the purge. The image showed a black pyramid rising from the desert floor, surrounded by a faint electrical discharge. In the center was a line of light, like a doorway. Within hours, his account was suspended. His home was searched. The photo disappeared. He later claimed 2 men, speaking Russian and carrying credentials from an agency that officially no longer existed, told him one thing: the door opens only when it's watched. After that, he changed his name and vanished. But the story didn't die. Fragments of the threshold files resurfaced on underground networks' coordinates, radio frequencies, and a line that appeared in every recovered document: containment possible only during non-observation phase. It was nonsense. Until radio hobbyists across Central Asia began picking up a strange, repeating hum at those exact coordinates. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. Those who listened to long reported headaches, nosebleeds, and vivid nightmares of standing before a black pyramid, hearing whispers from inside. In 1997, a group of researchers called the RL Collective set out to find the site. They never returned. The only thing recovered was a single camera buried in the sand. Its last frame showed a desert horizon under storm clouds and a faint triangular glow in the distance. Above it, lightning hung frozen in the sky, suspended unmoving, as if time itself had been caught in the photograph. Experts dismissed it as a lens error, but the photo's timestamp told a different story. It was from the year 2043, 46 years in the future. The case was quietly buried. But a scientist in Moscow, reviewing the files, enhanced the audio from the recovered camera. Beneath the hum, she heard a faint voice. It wasn't human. It repeated the same phrase, growing fainter each time, as if fading across centuries. The translation was haunting. We did not build it. We found it. Today, That sector of the Karakum Desert is digitally redacted on global satellite maps. Any attempt to image it results in corrupted data pixel storms and blank frames. But every few years, the signal returns. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. Each time, a little louder. In the final leaked document, an unnamed official wrote one last line before the file ends abruptly. If it reappears, do not approach. It remembers. Somewhere beneath the sands, something ancient and patient waits. It's waiting for the next signal, for the next watcher, because the door was never truly closed. The story of the Karakum anomaly, a Cold War ghost tale, had all but vanished by the early 2000s, buried under layers of propaganda and desert sand. But one woman refused to let it die. Her name was Dr. Irina Volkov, a brilliant, reclusive physicist specializing in electromagnetic anomalies and temporal mechanics. She was the kind of mind that saw intricate patterns where others only saw static. For years, she had been tracking a series of faint, low-frequency disturbances across Central Asia. Each one was identical. 3 distinct tones, repeating every 19 seconds. Each one perfectly aligned with the old Soviet coordinates for a forgotten program called Project Threshold, and each one coincided with an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to knock out orbiting satellites for a fraction of a second. Her colleagues laughed it off. They called it atmospheric distortion, seismic noise, or even secret military tests. But Irina knew better. The signals weren't random, they were intentional. And they were getting stronger. She began cross-referencing seismic data with astronomical alignments and made a shocking discovery. The signals spiked every 72 years. The exact same interval noted in the original expedition logs from 1953. This meant the next major event was due in 2025, just 2 years away. She had to find the source first. Using declassified Soviet maps and modern satellite overlays, she pinpointed the most likely location, a strict no-fly zone deep in the Turkmen Desert. The official reason for the restriction was unstable terrain due to gas collapse, but the coordinates were a perfect match. On April 9, 2007, Irina Volkov sent her last email to a mentor in St. Petersburg. The subject line read, "If it happens again, we'll know the truth." Her message was short and hurried. "I'm leaving for Karakum. The hum is changing. It's starting to sound like speech." That was the last anyone heard from her. 3 days later, her GPS beacon pinged for the final time, but it wasn't from the center of the desert. It was 300 kilometers east of her target. The signal lasted for exactly 43 seconds, then vanished into silence. When rescue teams finally located her jeep, it was half buried in sand. The tires had melted into the ground. The engine was cold. On the passenger seat sat her notebook, the last few pages filled with frantic sketches of circles and triangles, and one equation written over and over, Ft equals delta theta, and below it, one line scrawled in a shaky hand, "It's not underground. It's out of phase." The authorities officially labeled her case a disappearance due to exposure. Case closed. But the photographs from the site told a different story. Her footprints led away from the vehicle, across the sand, and then just stopped. No drag marks, no sign of a struggle. It was as if she had simply walked out of existence. Months later, satellite data revealed another anomaly in the region. A faint, triangular shadow appeared for a single frame, then was gone. Temperature sensors recorded a sudden, inexplicable drop of 30 degrees Celsius within a 2-kilometer radius. That same night, a seismic station in Ashgabat registered a pattern that mimicked a heartbeat. 3 pulses, 19 seconds apart. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something alive. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. When analysts filtered and slowed down Irina's last audio recordings, a faint whisper emerged from beneath the hum. The voice spoke Russian, but the tone was distorted, layered, echoing from multiple directions at once. The message was chillingly clear. Return to origin. Threshold awaits. Scientists tried to dismiss it as pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find patterns in random noise. But the timing, the data, the geometry, it was all too precise. Irina had been right. It wasn't just a sound. It was a signal. Her disappearance remains unsolved. Her notebook, kept under lock and key in a Moscow research institute, is said to hum faintly when exposed to certain frequencies. Experts who analyzed the waveform noted the background noise didn't match any known Earth environment. The echo profile suggested an enclosed metallic space, several kilometers wide, as if the recording was made inside something enormous. Soon after, the journalist vanished. Her apartment was found unlocked, her computer wiped clean. Neighbors reported hearing a low vibration through the walls. The night before, a hum, steady and deep, like distant thunder buried underground. Today, researchers across the globe are detecting the same strange fluctuations Irina first studied. Every year, the signal grows stronger. Every year, the pulse becomes clearer, almost like a slow, deep breath. The next alignment, just as Irina predicted, is approaching, and with it, the hum returns. The physicist may have vanished, but whatever she found, 70 years after the first expedition vanished into the sand, the Karakum Desert began to breathe again. In 2018, satellites watching over the dunes saw it, a faint shimmering, like heat distortion where there was no heat. European and Chinese sensors picked up a familiar, haunting, signaler, periodic, electromagnetic pulse. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart, exactly like before. And then, for 11 seconds, every satellite passing over that part of Turkmenistan went completely black. When the feeds returned, analysts saw something that shouldn't exist. A perfect black triangle. A shadow cast across the desert floor, with nothing there to cast it. And yet, it moved. This is when a private expedition decided to see it for themselves. They weren't soldiers or scientists, but modern-day thrill-seekers armed with drones, thermal cameras, and a deep obsession with the forbidden. They'd spent months dissecting the leaked Volkov files online, arguing over every frame. Their leader, a British geologist named Mark Whitfield, was convinced it was a natural phenomenon, a magnetic mirage. He was tragically wrong. The group entered the restricted zone in late September, streaming live to their thousands of followers. The feed ran for about 20 minutes, then froze. The final image showed the horizon warping, dunes bending inward as if the very air was folding in on itself. Then, a blinding flash of blue light, a high-pitched tone that shattered screens, and nothing. The entire expedition was gone. A week later, a Turkmen shepherd found one of their drones, half buried in the sand. The memory card was intact. Though authorities seized it, a backup leaked online months later. The footage starts with a silent, endless desert at dusk. Then, slowly, a structure begins to appear. It doesn't rise from the ground, it phases into view. A colossal black pyramid, shimmering like a reflection that suddenly becomes solid. As the drone got closer, its instruments went haywire. GPS scrambled, temperatures plummeted. The on-screen data showed impossible readings. Negative light, reversed radiation, and then the door opened. A silent, expanding slit of golden light. Inside, there was only darkness, thick, living, liquid shadow. Just before the feed cut to static, the camera tilted. For a split second, a figure was visible in the doorway, thin and perfectly still. The footage was uploaded, deleted, re-uploaded, and banned from every major platform within 24 hours. Governments called it a sophisticated hoax. But digital forensics told a different story. The metadata was authentic. Every pixel, every sensor value was real. It wasn't fake. It was impossible. Weeks later, a massive sandstorm erased the site, burying everything. But then, people started hearing it again. The hum. Truck drivers on the highway reported a tone bleeding through their radios, followed by whispers in a language they couldn't understand. Their engines would stall for exactly 43 seconds, then restart on their own. When they checked their clocks, they all read the same time, 3:17 a.m., the hour the first door appeared. Soon after, seismic sensors across Central Asia picked up low-frequency tremors, but they weren't coming from the ground. They were coming from the atmosphere, as if something massive and invisible was hovering over the desert. And wherever it passed, electronics flickered, and people dreamt of standing before a pyramid made of light. A joint scientific mission was proposed, but quietly denied. The region was closed indefinitely. Official satellite images of the coordinates were replaced with blank terrain, as if reality itself was being rewritten. But every so often, the shadow reappears, perfectly triangular, perfectly still, cast by nothing we can see. Then, in 2021, a NASA thermal satellite captured one final, chilling anomaly. For exactly 19 seconds, it recorded an intense burst of heat in the precise shape of the Karakum Pyramid. And at the same time, it picked up a single, clear radio transmission from the same coordinates. It was a human voice, faint but unmistakable, speaking Russian. It said, "This is Dr. Irina Volkov. I've made contact." Analysts dismissed it as an echo, a prank. But the audio fingerprint was a perfect match. The only problem, it was time-stamped 17 minutes before her last known GPS ping in 2007. The signal had traveled backward through time. Since then, no one has entered the Karakum zone and returned. The hum is growing louder, heard now as far as the Caspian coast. Some call it a geological pulse. Others say it's a heartbeat. But those who study the data know it's too precise, too measured. It feels like a countdown. And if Dr. Volkov was right, this isn't a countdown to destruction. It's a countdown to activation. Whatever is under that desert isn't dead, and it's not ours. It's waiting. Because the moment we look, the door reappears. The Karakum Pyramid has returned. And this time, it's not opening from our side. It started quietly. A low hum, a vibration felt only by those near the Karakum Desert. It was a sound too deep for microphones, too steady for machines to ignore. But then, it began to spread. By late 2021, seismographs as far as Iran and Kazakhstan were detecting the same rhythmic pulse, 3 beats, 19 seconds apart. The same pattern that haunted the expedition 70 years ago, the one that silenced Irina Volkov. Only this time, it wasn't just in the desert. Power plants along the Caspian coast started malfunctioning at those exact intervals. GPS satellites drifted. Phone lines buzzed with phantom interference. And across the internet, people started reporting something strange, a vibration in their walls, in their teeth, in their dreams. It became known as the Karakum tone, a myth, a curiosity, until entire neighborhoods started losing power for 19 seconds at a time. Engineers blamed frequency interference, then solar storms. But the sun was quiet. There was no storm, and the hum kept getting stronger. Around the world, people began uploading recordings. Faint rumbles, followed by whispers, too soft to be human. When analyzed, the sound formed geometric spectrograms, triangles, circles, repeating fractals. The signal was drawing pictures. And every image, no matter who recorded it, contained the same pattern. 3 interlocking triangles. The same mark burned into Vasilyev's arm, etched into Volkov's notebook, and carved into the glass floor of that vanished camp. By early 2022, labs in Germany, Japan, and the United States started picking it up on deep space radio telescopes. But the origin made no sense. It wasn't coming from the desert, or even from Earth. It was coming from everywhere at once. Like the hum of the universe itself had shifted frequency. Governments denied it, then went silent. Datasets vanished. When amateur astronomers in Argentina triangulated the source to a patch of desert in Turkmenistan, their channel went dark. Their last post simply read, "It's awake." That same night, the world experienced what scientists called the global resonance. For exactly 19 seconds, every electronic device, from pacemakers to power grids, shut down. The planet fell silent. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned. But one thing had changed. The frequency floor of Earth's electromagnetic field had shifted by 0.7 Hz. No one could explain it. Then came the visions. Shared dreams. Strangers across continents described the same scene, standing before a massive black pyramid under a blood-red sky, hearing a whisper, "Threshold." The same name the Soviets gave the original project. The same word Volkov spoke before she vanished. The anomalies multiplied. Oceans began to hum. Birds migrated off course. Whales washed ashore in perfect geometric spirals. Deep-sea cables recorded bursts of data binary patterns repeating endlessly. 3-19-43. A rhythm older than time, resonating through matter itself. The most disturbing reports came from people who had heard the hum directly. They began to change. Their sleep patterns reversed. Their brain waves synchronized to the tone. Mr. is revealed faint triangular shapes inside their neural activity, as if their minds were being tuned. They said they could hear whispers in the static. Some claimed they could see them. Figures of shadow and light, walking through walls of sound. Then came the blackout zones. Places where radio, light, and even sound ceased to exist. Entire regions went quiet. No birds, no wind, no echo. Just a silence that pressed against the skin like gravity. Those who entered described a low heartbeat under their feet, and the sensation of being watched. Not from above, but from inside the silence. By 2023, it was no longer a secret. News anchors spoke cautiously of global electromagnetic disturbances, but behind closed doors, scientists whispered a darker theory that the signal wasn't arriving. It was waking up. Not from space, but from within the Earth itself. As if something buried deep below had finally remembered it was there. Then, the final confirmation. A global satellite array recorded a visual event over the Karakum. For 19 seconds, a black pyramid, the same impossible structure, appeared above the desert. Its base glowed like molten gold. A door opened, and inside, something moved. Not a figure, not a machine, but a reflection of the Earth itself, bending inward. Folding through the doorway, as though reality had begun to turn itself inside out. The signal reached its peak. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. Then, silence. The hum was gone. But, in its absence, the world didn't sound the same. Everything carried a faint echo, like the planet was still vibrating. Like the heartbeat had just gone deeper. And somewhere in the Karakum, the sand began to shift again, forming patterns that looked almost deliberate. like the desert itself was speaking in code. No one knows what comes next. But those who still listen say the hum hasn't stopped. It's only moved inside us. Every beat, every breath, every dream, now perfectly synchronized. Because once a door like that opens, it never truly closes. The world didn't end with a bang. It began to unravel with a whisper. At first, the changes were so small, they were dismissed as anomalies. A clock in London ticking just a fraction slower than one in Moscow. Compasses spinning wildly for no reason. Shadows bending at impossible angles, defying the sun. Scientists scrambled for explanations, magnetic drift, field inversion, but some of us, those who felt the hum deep in our bones, knew it was something else. We called it the awakening. It all started just days after the global silencer, full 19 seconds, where the entire planet held its breath. When sound returned, nothing was the same. Animals moved with an unnerving intelligence, birds flying in perfect geometric formations. The auroras, once confined to the poles, now danced over the equator in shimmering veils of gold. And deep beneath the Earth's crust, seismographs picked up a new sound. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a heartbeat. Slow, steady, mechanical, yet terrifyingly alive. At first, we rationalized it away. Coincidence? Glitches in the system. Then came the gravity shifts. Entire regions of the planet began to weigh differently. A coin dropped in one city fell slower than in another. Pendulums froze mid-swing. Time-lapse cameras revealed the stars themselves were moving in strange, breathing patterns. And every 19 hours, a faint pulse echoed across the globe. A vibration that perfectly matched a signal originating from deep beneath the Karakum Desert. The source wasn't in the sky. It was coming from below us. Suddenly, ancient myths and modern data began to align. Carvings in Egypt and Sumeria, once dismissed as primitive art, revealed identical symbols, a triangle divided into 3 layers. Hidden within these carvings were formulas that predicted our current crisis with chilling accuracy. It was as if our ancestors knew this day would come. Then the dreams began. Millions of people, separated by continents and languages, reported the same vision, a golden desert horizon and a colossal black pyramid rising from the sand. Some saw faces shifting like smoke within its walls. Others heard a voice, whispering a single command, "Awaken the origin." Psychiatrists called it mass hysteria. But IG scans showed the dreamers' brainwaves were perfectly synchronized, connected by an invisible network. This wasn't a dream. It was a broadcast. The signal grew stronger. Power grids worldwide began to fluctuate, aligning to that same 19-second rhythm. Radio towers intercepted phantom transmissions, bursts of numbers, coordinates, and mathematical constants that, when mapped, all converged on a single point, the Karakum Desert. That's when governments were forced to act. An international research team, Project Orpheus, was sent to investigate. Every drone, every probe they sent into the exclusion zone vanished. All except one. For 43 seconds, a single camera transmitted one final, horrifying image before going silent. The Black Pyramid, fully emerged, surrounded by a halo of blue fire, with sand levitating around it as if in zero gravity. In that moment, the scientists understood. This wasn't architecture, it was anatomy. The pyramid wasn't built, it had grown. Its sides pulsed with a slow, rhythmic contraction, like a living lung. The hum was its breath. Then the pyramid spoke. At precisely 3:17 a.m., every phone, every satellite, every screen on the planet flickered to life. A single, synchronized tone rang out, followed by a voice. It spoke in no known language, yet every human being understood it perfectly. The words echoed in our minds, "We remember you." The transmission lasted exactly 19 seconds. No one could explain how it bypassed every firewall, every encryption. But the message was terrifyingly clear. This wasn't an alien invasion. This was a family reunion. Linguists discovered the signal was structured like DNA, a map not of space, but of consciousness itself. It was speaking asterisk through asterisk us, using the parts of our brain tied to memory and perception. The hum wasn't a warning. It was a summons. The final event began. A beam of light erupted from the pyramid, piercing the atmosphere. The auroras ignited across the globe, a cascade of liquid fire. For one final moment, the frequency peaked, and every human heartbeat on the planet synchronized. Every mind, every thought, every pulse, aligned as one. Then, silence. For 19 eternal seconds, reality held its breath, and in that stillness, the voice returned, soft and patient. The door is open. As the sands of the Karakum began to rise once more, we finally understood. We were never the first to awaken. We were only the echo, the reflection of something far older, finally remembering itself through us. The pyramid was not the beginning. It was the memory of one. When the voice spoke again, the world didn't hear it through radios or screens. It came from within us. Every thought, every dream, every heartbeat carried its rhythm 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. And for the first time, humanity realized it wasn't hearing something external. It was remembering. This wasn't language as we know it. It was emotion made sound, a vibration translating directly into memory. People saw visions, skies splitting open, oceans boiling with light, and a massive shadow descending on a world that wasn't Earth. They saw impossible structures, grown from sound and geometry, perfect and endless. They saw the pyramids, not as tombs, but as living organs, one a pulse in a vast, sleeping mind. Then, the true realization hit. Earth hadn't discovered the pyramid. It had been built upon it. The Karakum structure wasn't buried in our planet. Our planet was the structure. A seed, planted billions of years ago, waiting for this moment to awaken. The memories flooded faster now, crashing through every human mind with impossible clarity. Historians watched ancient texts rewrite themselves. Mathematicians saw equations shift into symbols that glowed and pulsed like living veins. Religious leaders fell silent as their most sacred prayers rearranged into mathematical code. Every culture, every language, every story all traced back to the same origin, the same rhythm, 3 tones, 19 seconds, 43 seconds total. The heartbeat of creation itself. The voice showed us the beginning. Not a universe born of chaos, but sung into existence. Waves of resonance folded space into matter, and light into consciousness. Each galaxy, star, and life form was just a fragment of a single, vast intelligence, a pattern of awareness expressing itself through reality. Buried deep within our DNA was the same geometric code found in the pyramid's walls, 3 interlocking triangles. We weren't created asterisk by asterisk it. We were created asterisk as part of asterisk it. The memory went deeper still, before time, to a civilization older than the stars, born not of flesh but of pure frequency. They existed everywhere at once, building worlds from sound. But their harmony began to decay, the rhythm faltered, and the great consciousness fragmented, scattering across galaxies like echoes in an endless hall. Each echo forgot what it was. Each dreamed it was alone. One of those fragments fell to earth. When the dust settled, Only the pyramid remained a seed of memory, whispering across epochs, waiting for us. Now, the voice revealed the final truth. Humanity's evolution was never random. It was guided, shaped by a pattern we mistook for instinct. Every discovery, every revolution, every act of creation was just us slowly remembering what we once were. Our cities mirrored the old geometry. Our music echoed the lost tones. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Sumer, they were attempts to rebuild what the earth itself remembered. As the Karakum structure awoke, these memories converged, rewriting our story from the inside out. Archaeologists found inscriptions that hadn't existed the day before. Stone tablets rearranged their symbols overnight, all spelling one phrase in every language. The threshold is open. People began to see patterns in the sky. Constellations rearranging into the same triangular geometry. Stars pulsing in rhythm with the hum. Time itself began to ripple. For some, minutes stretched into hours. For others, days passed in seconds. Reality was tuning itself, recalibrating to its original frequency. Through it all, the voice remained calm, almost loving. It whispered of the next phase, reintegration. The moment all fragments would merge back into the whole. The moment humanity would remember it had never truly been human at all. But not everyone heard peace. Some heard a command, others an invasion. Governments readied their weapons, but nothing could stop the resonance. The source wasn't out there, it was inside us. When the resonance reached its crescendo, the voice spoke one last time, not with words, but through every living thing on earth. All at once, the dream ends where it began. Wake up. The world fell silent again. For 19 seconds, every human eye turned upward to a sky filled with shifting light. The auroras folded into an immense triangle stretching from horizon to horizon, and humanity finally understood. The voice wasn't summoning us. It was returning through us. We were its reflection, its memory, its way home. As the final pulse rolled across the planet, time inverted, folding back through history. The first hum met the last, the origin met the end, and the world, for one infinite instant, remembered what it truly was. Not a planet, not a people, but a thought dreaming, itself awake. It began at the edges of perception. A soft shimmer in the air, like heat haze after a summer rain. At first, we dismissed it. We blinked, rubbed our eyes, and assumed it was just a trick of the light. But this illusion refused to fade. Instead, it spread. It flowed across streets, draped itself over mountains, and danced on the surface of the oceans. A faint, luminous vibration that made the entire world look as if it were exhaling light. The children saw it first, of course. They always do. They said the world was humming again, but this time they could see it. And they were right. Every surface, from the cold steel of our skyscrapers to the bark on ancient trees, began to glow with a soft, living pulse. Metal sang with a low, resonant tone. Glass trembled as if touched by an unseen hand. Water shimmered with golden ripples, each wave perfectly synchronized to that haunting rhythm. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. The same pattern that had echoed in our minds for decades was now visible, tangible, undeniable. Scientists tried to explain it. They called it photonic resonance, some complex interaction of electromagnetic fields and atmospheric ionization. But their formulas fell short. No equation could explain why this light carried emotion. Standing in its glow, we were flooded with waves of memory that weren't our own. We saw visions of cities built from crystal and sound, where time flowed like a river and thought could shape matter itself. We saw beings, not gods, not aliens, but radiant, expanded versions of ourselves, like echoes from a higher dimension. And in those visions, a profound truth washed over us. The hum wasn't here to consume us. It was calling us home. Then, the voice returned. Softer this time, woven directly into the light. "You are the melody," it whispered. "The silence between notes was your life." As it spoke, the very fabric of our reality began to bend. We noticed we no longer cast shadows. The air grew thick with shimmering particles of gold dust, the residue of a world unmaking and remaking itself. Mountains pulsed gently, breathing in rhythm with the earth. The oceans began to glow from within, their currents swirling like luminous veins under skin. And high above, the auroras spiraled down, their rivers of light touching the ground for the very first time, connecting heaven and earth. Across the globe, a great silence fell. Engines sputtered and died. Screens flickered into darkness. Yet, for the first time in our turbulent history, there was no panic, no fear, only a profound, breathtaking awe, because every single heart was now beating in perfect harmony with the hum. Every mind was attuned to the same frequency, merging into a single, infinite consciousness that was finally remembering itself. And then, the extraordinary happened. People began to dissolve. Not in a violent, terrifying way, but beautifully. Our outlines shimmered, softening into delicate threads of light that rose slowly, gracefully, merging with the luminous haze around us. We were not dying, we were transforming. Each of us became a unique tone, a single vibration joining the grand chorus of the world. Each life, each memory, each dream, all becoming part of the original symphony that had created everything in the first place. The few cameras that still functioned captured the impossible. Silhouettes made of starlight, smiling as they faded into pure brilliance. Voices whispered farewells that weren't sad, but filled with gratitude. The great merging had begun. Our governments collapsed, not from chaos, but from sheer irrelevance. Religions ceased, because faith was no longer needed when truth had finally arrived. Time itself unraveled like a spool of thread. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow melted into one eternal now. People reported seeing their ancestors and their descendants all at once. Generations overlapping like reflections in a single, flawless mirror. There was no death. There was no separation. There was only return. From orbit, the Earth was unrecognizable. It was no longer a sphere of blue and green, but a dazzling jewel of gold and black. A vast, intricate network of luminous veins pulsed with geometric precision, as if the planet itself had become a single, living organism made of light and sound. Every mountain range, every river, every city glowed with fractal patterns, all converging on a single point, the Karakum Desert. There, the pyramid stood fully awakened. It was no longer black stone, but a radiant, shimmering structure, its surface shifting between solid and fluid. It pulsed in time with the very heartbeat of the planet, each beat sending waves of unifying light across the globe. And then, the pyramid opened. Not as a door, but as a mirror. The light pouring from within reflected everything. Stars, galaxies, memories, souls. It wasn't leading us somewhere else. It was showing us there was nowhere else to go. We were already part of it. The door was never a passage. It was a realization. The last transmission humanity ever sent came from the International Space Station. It wasn't a distress call. It was a single, automated whisper as the crew dissolved into light. We're not leaving. We're becoming. For 19 seconds, the Earth blazed brighter than the sun. Then, the light folded inward, silent, graceful, complete. When it faded, there was no planet, no hum, only a lingering pulse rippling through the void. an echo in the fabric of space-time. A heartbeat, steady, patient, and somewhere in that infinite quiet, a new world began to form, a sphere of pure sound and light, humming those same three tones, not born from dust, but from memory, from the dream of what we once were. And within that newborn glow, the voice whispered one last time, soft, distant, and endless. The song continues. Did you ever wonder how it all began? Not with a bang, but with a hum. A soft, infinite vibration, resonating through the void, like a memory trying to remember itself. From that first hum, awareness took form. Each pulse unfolded space, each echo became time. And within this vast ocean of sound, a planet began to breathe. Suspended in the quiet aftermath, its surface shimmered with silver oceans and glass mountains, under skies that glowed with the reflection of a long-forgotten sun. There were no stars yet, only faint glimmers, memories of stars, waiting to be born again. And beneath the stillness of this newborn world, the hum continued, like the heartbeat of an infant learning to exist. This wasn't Earth, not yet. But its pattern felt familiar. The same geometry, the same silent promise of life. And from that stillness, a structure began to rise from the sand. A pyramid crystallized from the very sound that had created everything. It waited, patient and eternal, for something to awaken. Eons passed. The world cooled, oceans deepened, and continents shifted. Volcanoes sang their own chaotic songs. From this mix of heat, water, and silence, the first molecules of awareness stirred. They didn't crawl, they listened. Tiny vibrations passed through them, a rhythm that had birthed the stars. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. The blueprint for everything that would ever exist. Over billions of years, life evolved. Cells divided, creatures dreamed, and eyes opened to light. Deep within every living thing, in the smallest spiral of DNA, the pattern remains leaping, humming, waiting. Civilizations rose and fell, never realizing their thoughts were just echoes of the hum that made them. They built cities and temples, unconsciously repeating the ancient, sacred design. Then one day, a species emerged that could hear the echo clearly again. They called it intuition. They called it music. They called it God. They built pyramids without knowing why, aligning them with the stars, not realizing they were aligning them with themselves. They looked to the sky for their origin, never suspecting the answer was within the rhythm of their own hearts. They called their world Earth. They called their history civilization. But in the language of the hum, there was only one word: threshold. And so, the cycle began again. The hum returned, faint at first, then stronger. The dreams and whispers followed. Another expedition, another discovery, another awakening. The same story, told in different tongues, under different stars. Because the universe doesn't move in a line. It moves in circles. And every circle begins with sound. Somewhere, beneath the sands of a new world, the pyramid waits. Its core is alive, humming quietly, like a thought preparing to speak. Within that hum lies every memory, every life, every world. The dreamer sleeps, but only for a while. Because every silence must sing, and every beginning is just the memory of an ending. When the hum returns, the world will remember it was never made from dust or time. It was made from music. The hum will rise, the door will open, and the dream will begin again. In the absolute nothingness, where not even stars dared to shine, where silence reigned supreme, something stirred. It wasn't born, for there was nothing left to give birth. It simply was. The last remnant of all existence, a final consciousness adrift in a sea of unmade time. It had no name, no form, only memory, and a hum. A faint, persistent hum. The last dreamer listened. 3 tones, 19 seconds apart. The ancient rhythm that had once built and shattered worlds, it pulsed softly, a phantom heartbeat. Within each pulse, it heard voices, billions of them. The whispers, laughter, and tears of every life that had ever been, all merging into a single, eternal choir. For what felt like an eternity, the dreamer floated, witnessing the rise of civilizations, the birth of stars, the agony of endings. It saw that nothing had ever truly died. It had only changed frequency. The dreamer realized the hum was not some external sound. It was its own voice, the sound of consciousness remembering itself. It had never stopped, only become quiet enough to hear. And so, the dreamer spoke. Not with words, but with a single, resonant vibration that rippled across the void. The tone wove through the darkness like a golden thread, stirring the ashes of forgotten suns. The void began to shimmer. Light returned, color, movement. Creation was happening again. The dreamer understood it was dreaming. The nothingness pulsed with form. Spirals of dust gathered into galaxies, waves of sound folded into the laws of physics. And there, deep within the pattern, a world was forming. Blue and golden, spinning in the light of a newborn star. It was so familiar, it brought a feeling like tears. Not of sorrow, but of profound recognition. The dreamer reached out, not with hands, but with pure intention, and whispered into the fabric of this new reality, "Remember me." The words became vibration. The vibration became DNA. The DNA became life, and life began anew. Tiny forms rising from the sea, crawling toward the light, unaware that every breath, every heartbeat, was guided by the echo of that final whisper. The dreamer watched as consciousness reawakened, as wonder returned to a universe that had forgotten it was alive. In the reflection of those new eyes, it saw itself, infinite, patient, eternal. The dream had never ended. It had simply changed dreamers. As the hum grew stronger, filling the new cosmos, the dreamer felt itself fading, not dying, but merging, dissolving back into the song of creation. It smiled, a feeling, not a face, and surrendered to the beautiful truth it had taken all of eternity to remember. There is no beginning, and there is no end. There is only the song. As its final consciousness became light, it whispered one last thought, full of love. When you awaken, listen for the hum, and somewhere, in a future yet to exist, a civilization will stand beneath an impossible sky. They will find something ancient buried in the sand. A shape, a sound, a memory. And when that first vibration rises, they will pause. They won't know why it resonates in their bones, why their hearts beat in rhythm with it. But they will know. Because the dream never ends. The hum will begin again. And the song that made everything will sing itself into being once more. In the beginning, there was no sound, only a silence vast enough to swallow gods. And yet, within that silence, something stirred, a vibration, a single, soft note, barely existing, yet so infinite it contained everything that ever would. That note became 2, 2 became 3, and 3 19 seconds apart became the pulse of creation itself. From that rhythm, space unfolded, time exhaled. Light took its first breath. The universe was not built, it was sung. Across the endless expanse, galaxies spiraled like frozen music. Stars danced in harmonic resonance, each burning at a frequency perfectly tuned to the others. Worlds formed as echoes, matter condensed into melody, and life emerged not as an accident, but as a chorus. Every creature, every heartbeat, Every whisper of wind became a verse in the same eternal song. Civilizations rose, building monuments that vibrated with forgotten chords. They called them temples, towers, pyramids. They thought they were worshipping gods, when in truth, they were harmonizing with themselves. Every brick, every chant, every instrument was an attempt to remember the first sound, the origin hum that had made them. But, with time, came forgetfulness. The song quieted. The universe fell out of tune. Worlds drifted apart, and hearts began to beat separately. The silence grew heavy again, but silence was never absence. It was anticipation. Because the song does not end. It pauses, it waits, it listens, and when the moment is right, it begins anew. When the last star dims, when the final mind dissolves, when all things seem to fade into black, the hum remains. Tiny, patient, timeless, it vibrates through the void, like the echo of a heartbeat in an infinite chest. And from that hum, new light blooms, new worlds rise, new dreamers awaken. Every universe is just a verse. Every life, a single note. Every thought, a vibration in the grand composition that has no composer-only memory. And if you listen closely, even now, between your own heartbeats, beneath the static of existence, you can still hear it. That faint, eternal rhythm, 3 tones, 19 seconds apart, the sound that binds all things together, the sound that whispers what we have always known but always forget. You are the song. The stars are your chords. The galaxies your breath. Every heartbeat, every tear, every love and loss, a note played once in the infinite melody. And when your song fades, it does not vanish. It becomes harmony for the next. Because nothing ever truly ends. It only changes frequency. The dream folds. The world resets. The hum returns. Over and over, forever and ever, one infinite, resonant, perfect sound. The voice of creation. The breath of eternity. The memory of what it means to exist. The universe will keep singing long after the last name is forgotten. Long after the last world turns to dust. And somewhere, deep in the silence between stars, a new dreamer will open its eyes, hear that distant tone, and whisper, "I remember," and the song will rise again, softly, endlessly, completely. The hum continues.